from a policy perspective, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, if there was a desire by an organic farmer to obtain some organic farm ground that the diversion authority owned, I think from a policy perspective, as it's written today, that would fall into this section 7, an unsolicited proposal, which would then drive it to anything that's deemed reasonable, would then end up being competitively looked at in the marketplace. So it does offer a vehicle within the policy to consider really any proposal brought by any individual or any entity, but it does require that go through a public process once it's accepted by the authority.
And I think that the more we can go through the public process, the better. I just want to carve out the big ones that we know that we're going to have to address in this policy. So Eric and his crew have got guidance. The leasing follows the same policy as the purchases. So, this is something that will be actively used in the very short future. So I've got 2 issues here, and we're going to have to figure this out rapidly because it's 4 o'clock. Although I note that the public outreach did run over a little bit. But, the one question I have is the adjacent land. Do we still want to include that, exclude that? And I wonder if Jenny's online yet. Somebody just raised their hand and I can't see who it is, but go ahead and.
This is Jenny.
Okay, great.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm having some tech issues. For me personally, I'm really struggling with the fact, obviously my technical issues, but this is a huge issue and I'm just not comfortable to rushing to make a decision on it because it's 4 o'clock. We have the MCCJPA board tomorrow. The Cass County Joint Board kind of meets on this stuff. And I really feel like this is something that we need to further work out a little bit because the organic thing is big because it takes a lot of time to obviously have this certified. But, I've been quite vocal about making sure that our, rural neighborhoods, so to speak, are left as intact as possible after we go through this. And so I'm personally not comfortable making a decision on this piece today.
Thank you. And, I was hoping that we would be further along in the conversation than we are at this point. And I would agree. We've still got a ways to go. Besides the adjacent land issue, John, do you have any suggestions, any language suggestions that you could work on for carving out urban properties in a way that would satisfy the policy and the intent?
Yeah, I have a couple of ideas on how to draw. I don't have any off the top of my head right at the moment, but we could certainly work on a carve out for the urban properties within the city and their extraterritorial zone. I think there are valid policy reasons to treat those differently than property out in the country. It's just a different circumstance, and so could certainly develop some additional carve outs for that language, and I can work with Martin on that.
I think that would be one good step. Commissioner Breitling, I see you have your hand up. I cannot hear you, however.
How about now?
Yes.
Well, given the discussions that have taken place today so far, it seems to me that perhaps we're going to have a special meeting of the Land Committee within a week or 10 days or something like that, so that we can consider the possibilities of changes that John Shockley would author.
Yes, I think that that would be wise. Would you like to make a motion to table this until we can figure out another date to get together?
I so move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, Olson seconds.
Thank you. And there is some more discussion. Nathan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment that as John's putting language together with Martin, I'd be more than willing to review any as well and provide any comments as it gets developed.
That would be great. It would be, you know, and if you folks at the JPA could have any discussion, you know, bring forth any concerns that you might have. Does anybody have any thoughts about the 20-acre adjacent land zone? Anybody have any input on that? That's been a sticking point as well. I'd love to have input on it.
Mary, I think we're having a hard time hearing you. You were picking up. I think somebody's mic is open. Some other.
Someone.
We have a couple of attendees by phone that are not muted. So if you could please mute your phone, that would be helpful.
We are still having a land management meeting, finance people. So if you could just mute, we'll be done here shortly. Okay, who was on first? Was that Jenny?
I'm here. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what the question was.
Okay, I was just looking for if anybody had any more input on the adjacent landowners, specifically the 20 or 10 acres or whatever it might be, or no acres. I mean, obviously, an adjacent landowner can always bid on the property as well. Certainly nothing is precluding them from doing that. I'm just personally torn a little bit with whether or not we're picking winners and losers, and I change my mind hourly on this. So, you know, I would just really like to put.
Madam Chair, this is Roger. You know, I've strongly supported the adjacent landowner, and for the reason we've impacted these people. Yes, we have compensated these people. I understand that. But then to turn around and just open it up to public auction, I feel is disturbing the way farming is done down there now. And we're disturbing enough. I believe that the adjacent landowners have the right, or not necessarily the right, but should have the opportunity of first right. And you know, we as a diversion authority have the right to reject any bid that we get. And if we feel it's not enough, then you go to the next preference. And that's the public auction. So, you know, we really have the right to reject the bid. And I think that really puts that gives us the ability to really control how much we're going to get for this land. And on the flip side, if we put it all up for auction, it will be different landowners. There's about 945 acres that sold southeast of Castleton, went to 2 land developers. Did not necessarily go to farmers. So, I mean, if that's what we want, if that's what we want to see in this area, then just open it up to public auction right out the preference 1. But if we want to try to keep it more the way it is now and not be so impactful to the landowners down there, I think we have an obligation to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
I really
completely
appreciate
agree.
it. Yeah, and thank you, Jenny. I know I know you mentioned that before, and I really do appreciate that. I'm not hearing anybody saying anything else. Kevin, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to concur with Roger. I think he was spot on there. But I'm just wondering, and I was listening in a little bit to Nathan and the city's concerns, and there are differences maybe in neighboring issues regarding in town versus rural areas too, and maybe we need to look at something that is based on an acreage thing, or whether it's 1 or 2 acres or something that there's some different discretion given, because I can understand from a city standpoint too where there could be different issues. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. We'll talk about it at MCC JPA.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And Commissioner Breitling, did you have one more thing you wanted to add? Eric?
No, I have nothing else to add. And I think the motion is before you and has been seconded.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to give Martin, Eric, and John some good solid direction, because they're going to go back and do this again and bring it back to us. And I just want to make sure that if people have something to say it now. Eric, anything else?
I'm going to follow up with Roger offline. I guess I have a nuance on some of this impacted land that I'll coordinate with him on. So,
all right, great. Then let's take a roll call vote on this.
Mrs. Shirlene?
Yes.
Mr. Grubb?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Borboom?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Breitling?
Yes.
Ms. Monjo?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yeah.
That is everyone.
Thank you. And somebody needs to mute their mic, please. Kevin, your hand is up. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Sorry, no.
Okay. I've only gotten halfway through our agenda, but I would ask, I think most of this is just pretty routine stuff. Is there anything there that any of the staff, Joel, Eric, Martin, John, anybody's got anything here that we need to talk about?
Mary, I can probably just give 30 seconds and cover the rest of these items. The committee
Certainly, thank
update.
you.
Yeah, the committee update for the board is in your packet. There's just a few bullet points there, a high-level summary that you might be able to provide to the DA board tomorrow. The joint board continues to be active, buying land and trying to negotiate deals. We do have a lot of farmland leases for 2021 that are being presented to both the joint board and a few on the MIC board side. Both of those groups meet tomorrow. I have not heard any updates from MetroCog lately. This is kind of a standing agenda item for them to offer any updates as necessary, but I don't believe they have anything. Hopefully I'm not misspeaking for Adam or Cindy on that. And other business, we're out of time, so I don't think we have any other business. That was 25 seconds.
Very good, thank you. Is there any other business? Any other business? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Campbell, second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you so much. We are adjourned. We'll see you again soon.
Uh, Thank you to all the great work that the Lands Committee is doing. They are running a little bit late today, so to the Finance Committee, we appreciate your patience very much. Today, we're Wednesday, February 24th, is the Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. Don, could I please ask you to please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Mr. Costin.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Steen. Mr. Gehrig. Ms. McCall.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. Item number 2 on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. The meeting minutes from January 27th have been distributed and are in the packet. Is there any additions or corrections to the January 27th Finance Committee meeting? This is an actionable item. I'd entertain a motion, please.
Redlinger move.
Thank you.
Jacobson.
McCall.
Jacobson, second.
McCall, second.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson, for the second. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the January 27th meeting. Don, would you please call a roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone, and I see Mr. Peterson has joined us.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Steen is also waiting in some lobby that we don't know about. That's where I've been sitting for the last 17 minutes. So if you could forward something on to Rick, that'd be outstanding. Thank you.
Don or Joel, could I ask you to do that, please?
Yeah, I will forward him my invite right now.
I had the same issue, so I can relate to what they're going through. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the February 10th meeting. This is an actionable item, so they have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Move to approve. Austin.
Second, Redlinger.
Thank you. But we have been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the February 10th meeting of the Diversion Authority Finance Committee. Ron, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen, are you able to join yet? Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, John. Item number 3 is to approve the order of the agenda. The agenda has been distributed. It is in front of you. Does any of the Finance Committee members wish to make any adjustments or amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Do we need a motion and a second, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair?
My apologies, yes.
I would so move, sir.
Thank you,
Second,
Mr.
Chuck.
Peterson. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as distributed. My sincere apologies. Don, please call the roll.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes, I like to see Bernie getting ahead of himself.
Yeah. Trying to make up time.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes, and the mayor's always about 10 steps ahead of us, so.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Costin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is
You
it.
missed me. This is Chuck.
And Mr. Steen is on now, and it's yes.
Mr. Steen, thank you.
Yes.
This is Chuck. You missed me, but I'll say yes too.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yep, no problem.
Item number 4 is the approval of the bills. We call on Mr. Costin, please, to go through the bills.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. On the bills listing today is $13,620,152.50. Large payout for Cass Joint Water District for lands, 7.5 approximately. Some City of Fargo Intel levy projects and legal bills, et cetera. So that would be the listing.
Thank you, Mr. Costin. Is there any questions from Mr. Costin with regard to those bills? Hearing none, we'll move on to the financial report, and we'll do the two together.
Need a motion to approve.
Dean moves to approve the bills. Is there a second?
Peterson, second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Been moved and seconded. Don, would you please call a roll for the approval of the bills?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Costin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Item number 5 is the financial report. Again, we call on Mr. Costin for that.
Yes, on page 35 of your report, the 2021 spend year-to-date so far, $709,806, and the cumulative project-to-date spend of $632,603,365. I just wanted to comment. I believe I was looking at the sales tax numbers a little bit, where the City of Fargo and Cass County, the 2020 accrual. We have one entry to make of one more month of sales tax collections that would convert this to an accrual report. So that's showing a little light from past the past fiscal year. But I did want to report out because Mike Redlinger and I talked about reporting of sales tax doesn't often get clarified, but I ran at least the City of Fargo's sales tax collections for 2020, and it was a 4.2% increase for the record. I think that's important to keep our eye on that. And I also think it's important that perhaps maybe one of the financial reporting policies should be to adopt a month-to-month fiscal report of sales tax collections, because everybody and all the stakeholders and all the P3 providers and the debt holders and everybody will be looking very closely at sales tax. And it's not presently that clearly stated in our financial reports. So I would advocate for that moving forward.
Great point, Mr. Costin. Thank you for that. For the point of reference, West Fargo's sales tax collections were up 5.18%. So it's considering COVID, it's a positive. Mr. Peterson, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Costin, thanks for bringing that up. I had actually mentioned that some time ago because our friends that, unlike us in Cass, where we have to report every 2 weeks or every month to pass money to Fargo, some of us don't have to go through that motion. So educating us and keeping us up to speed would be outstanding. And I'd recommend our friends in Clay and in Moorhead do the same as well, because again, they're not as dependent as we are necessarily, but keeping the economic status of how we're doing as a region, as a valley, I think is good for all of us to know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Are there any questions with regard to Mr. Costin? Do you have additional report on your financial report?
Yeah, I think on page 136, or excuse me, on page 36, the net position as stated there is $425,942. That would be the extent of my report.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of Mr. Costin with regard to the financial report? This is an actionable item. I do need a motion, please.
Jacobson, so
Pleasure,
moved.
move to approve.
Mr. Jacobson moves. Is there a second, please?
Second. On pleasure.
Mr. Montplaisir seconds. Then moved and second to approve the financial report as presented by Mr. Costin. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Costin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Item number 6 on our agenda is the Executive Director's Financial Report. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Chairman Dardis. Just want to make one note prior to digging into the budgets here a little bit. As the Finance Committee is probably more than aware, House Bill 1431 did pass the House of Representatives in the North Dakota Legislature. That bill does provide $435.5 million in cash available this summer for the Diversion Authority's use. A couple pieces to also report out there. House Bill 1020 also passed, and that is the State Water Commission bill. And so the bonding was included in the $435 million was included in that bill for the State Water Commission to appropriate to the Diversion Authority. The last bill that I'm tracking that's really a piece of the puzzle is how they're going to finance and pay off the debt service for the bonding in House Bill 1431, and that is House Bill 1380. That did pass appropriations, and so it will be heard by the House here shortly if it's not already calendared and scheduled for approval. So certainly a huge impact to our program as far as certainty of funding is concerned. Really gives us the ability to lock up our financial plan and have that certainty and that knowledge that the funds are available when we need them as we move into construction. So I will move into the budget unless there's any questions on any of those legislative actions that have been occurring relatively quickly here in the last few weeks. All right. Well, as Mr. Costin reported out, or Mr. Montplaisir, total project expenditures to date, we're sitting at $632.6 million. You can see we did not expend all that much in January. Majority of our costs were related to the P3 procurement, legal and engineering, and the lands program for acquisition of property. So here you can see management, legal, financial, procurement. That's related to the P3, 625,000. And then we move into some small amounts for some of the construction projects that are continuing to move forward. Most of these are for bidding and support, engineering support services. The next page shows, again, some additional engineering work related to some of the ongoing construction works, Fargo in-town levee projects, very minor amount there, and then the budgets and the line items for the land acquisition and mitigation. And the last part of our level 2 status here really related to engineering and design work for projects that will be moving forward this summer. the work in kind studies that's related to the P3 procurement and a few of the core projects, the I-29 grade raise and the SE1 project. As well as the management and legal through Onstead Twitchell for the administration of those programs. So to date, in 2021, we have spent $2.4 million related to Diversion Authority activities. And I can certainly take any questions if there are any.
Questions for Mr. Paulson?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please. Is that Mr. Peterson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Joel, so as I'm looking at the spreadsheet, I just want to, we haven't asked this for three meetings. I'm wondering how we're looking as far as budgets going for land acquisition. Are we on pace? Are we above? Are we below? Give me your just sort of generic thoughts on how we're looking at for budgets regarding land acquisition, please.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Peterson. That's a great question, and certainly something that we're monitoring on a month-by-month basis because of the large amount of property acquisitions that we're currently doing and currently just closed for the P3 procurement. As the committee is aware, we do need to provide all of the land for the channel portion of the project this year, and so we are moving through a large amount of acquisitions there. I would say that we are still running close to budget. We do have some concerns, however, the number of quick take land, last resort eminent domain actions that we are currently undertaking is more than anticipated. However, it is still a small portion of the total land acquisition. And so, as you know, Commissioner Peterson, the amount of work and effort to go into a last resort eminent domain acquisition is significantly higher than a voluntary sale. So as we add more of those than were anticipated, there are some potential budget concerns there. I would say we're well over halfway through our land acquisition program, and so as we continue to acquire more and more land, the overall budget becomes more and more clear. But as of today, I don't want to sound any alarms. I don't think it's a concern, but I certainly think it's something that we need to continue to monitor at a very close with a very close eye. And certainly something that we'll bring to finance the moment that we have any sort of cause for concern.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Peterson. This goes back to earlier discussions that the Finance Committee has had regarding a dashboard with relationship to where we're at, a snapshot of where we're at on budget versus expenditures as we move forward in 2021. As everything is coming at us at a very fast pace. So, in conversations with Mr. Peterson, we're hopeful, Mr. Paulson, we're hopeful to have that dashboard by our March meeting, but we won't hold him to that, but we're hopeful. Mr. Paulson, would you like this to be an actionable item on your financial report?
No, Your Honor. This is just for information purposes, just available if there's any questions. You're correct in the dashboard. We will have that available for preview at the next Finance Committee meeting. I know my report out has these line items, and we dig in from line or level 1 to level 2. I don't think it's as intuitive as maybe more of a visual dashboard, and then really tracking those budgets from that standpoint overall instead of on an annual basis is going to assist in just providing that level of comfort where we're at on certain topics. So no action to be taken, Chairman Dardis, but I am available for any additional questions if there are.
Questions for Mr. Paulson on the financial report? on his financial report. Anyone? All right, moving on. Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Item number 7 on the agenda is a communication director update. Ms. Darling.
Thank you. I'll share my screen if you'll just give me a minute. Can you see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. So today is day 74 that I've been on the project so far, and we're not even at that 90-day mark for the first 30, 60, 90 days, but we've accomplished quite a bit so far. I'm going to give you just an overview today of what I'm looking at for the whole view of communications, the core initiatives that we're working on now for the next 6 to 12 months, the various communication channels that we're communicating through, talk about some of the next steps, and then review the budget for communications for this year. So I'll start with just the overall view of communications, just to give an understanding of the depth of what we're trying to accomplish. It's been tagged before as public outreach, which would be in that external piece that you see, but it's far more than that. The external would cover also just community and general lands, local business, emergency management, the townships. Internal is alignment with all the internal entities, like the Diversion Authority, the USACE, Jacobs, AE2S, Legal, the P3 Partnership. Then there's media for press releases, feature stories, proactive and reactive events, as well as print, online, and TV. Then we have initiatives, which are the key vital activities that need a high level attention and accuracy. We have our day-to-day things that we're constantly doing, but there's those certain elements during phases of the project that need a high level of attention, and that's what those would be. We have our functional area, which is both team and project management, consistency in the templates and the ways that we're working, our messaging, our brand alignment, any software that we might be utilizing to stay on track, and just meetings. Also, we have leadership, is the diversion, the committees, and the board. Just ensuring that we have a consistent and insightful thought leadership program for these teams. Then our crisis communications is proactive planning for any emergency situation that could arise during the P3 bid process, any negative media that we receive, a financial and funding issue, a community impact during construction. Of course, we hope that none of those things happen, but in case there is some kind of issue with safety or any of those items along the project, we're proactive to be prepared for those. Then you have events, that would be live events in the community, conferences, local universities, our general or colonel visit from the USACE. So those key things where we need to put some focus on those efforts, as well as our channels. We have several different channels that we're communicating through, and I'll dive into that just a little bit more later in the presentation. But that's just the full scope of what we're tackling for communications beyond public outreach, just to give you a broad view of what we're trying to wrap our arms around from a communications perspective. Some of the priorities over the next 6 months are to build the communications team, engage through this legislative assembly, align our approach with all of the constituents. That goes into the brand, our language, our visuals, our templates, our project status, just ensuring that there's consistency across the board between all of those, and I'll touch on that a bit in a minute as well. Build a more proactive media relations approach. Right now we've been a little bit reactive from where we were at before until now, so just building a little bit more proactiveness around that so we can tell the story and kind of shift the direction that we're heading going forward. Strengthening our impacted landowner communications is a big one. Such a sensitive part of this project, and we want to ensure that we're doing that in the most thoughtful way as possible. Building our national coalition of partnerships, enhancing partner communications across the board, The P3 strategic planning is crucial. We're getting ready to get into that phase with the bids coming. So there's a lot of planning that is happening now as we're preparing for that, preparing for the announcement, onboarding with their team, and then transitioning into that construction phase. And then activating opportunities at key events for our water commissions, for local presentations at the universities to engage in our internship program. So those are just some of the key priorities over the next 6 months, but there's many more things on top of that that we're tackling as well. Now, to show you just a little bit of what I've been trying to get my arms around from that brand perspective that I was talking about earlier, this is a list of all of the various names that we've used for the project and the authority that I've seen in different areas of the project. So you'll notice that it's quite a few, but there's the ones highlighted in blue that I have confirmed with legal that those would be the proper names to use for the project and the authority. Those are the official legal names. Now that first one is a little bit too long for a logo or for naming, so we use number 5 for the short version of that. But you can see just the inconsistency in how we're aligned across the project, even just from a name perspective. And with those logos being very different, you don't really get a sense of identity that that's the same project that you're engaged with. So I'll show on the next slide is an approach that I'm helping to build that consistency across the brand. So it could be different colors, but having the similar logo with a little bit different color helps identify both the project and authority, that it's the same consistent brand and messaging across all of what we're sharing. We're identifying with those legal names that we should be using on the project, and that's just a little insight of how we're trying to have that same foundation of all of our templates and our look and our feel and our messaging across the board with the project as a whole, which will help us have that strong foundation going forward in everything that we do for communications. Then with the communication channels, we have several different channels that you will recognize, all of them on here except for ClickUp, I'll talk about in a minute. But the one thing that we always link back to is the website, and that should be our key core source of truth for everything that we're broadcasting about the project. It's the one URL that we're always putting on messaging, on letter templates, on everything that we're sending out. That website is that key source that people are engaging with and going back to find the sources of information. And I'll talk about in the next slide a little bit of how we're needing to evolve in that area as well. But to get a grasp of how we're tracking what we're doing between all of these groups that I touched on earlier and between all of these channels here, ClickUp is a engagement platform internally where we can track activities between all of the groups. No matter what entity they're with, we can all come together and collaborate on that platform for evolving communications and be able to share some analytics from that as well. The website, this is our current website. If you go to it, this is the home page that you see, and really you don't get a good feel for who we are, what this project is, what we're trying to accomplish, who's involved, where we're located. When you come to this home page, it should be crystal clear, the initial details of that project, and then you can find some more news and information throughout. But this is one of the things that we need to evolve to make sure that we have just that consistent, clear message going forward, not only in our brand, our messaging, but also in these channels that we're broadcasting information from as well. So that leads us to some of the next steps. Really, this project is a mega project, as you all know, that is moving at such a fast pace. There's so much that we'd like to do to build a permanent local team here on the ground, but to get there, we need to make sure that we stay afloat during these next several months. It's such a strategic period to just keep things moving as rapidly as possible as we're getting into this P3 and this construction phase. We can't drop the ball. So having this core strategic consulting group helping to get through this time to get to where we can build that local permanent team on the ground was what the phase that we're in now. It's for this year, and then as we move into that next group, we'll have that key local support onboarded and ready to continue on with that. So for now, we have just a strategic team that is solving some initial needs in this phase. And to give you a little bit more detail, one of those principal strategic communication individuals is Joanne Henry. She's nationally recognized, award-winning writer. She's had hundreds of media placements with across top media entities. She's also worked with large redevelopment projects and has a strong reputation in this area, also working with the St. Paul District of the Corps of Engineers. She's also been a chair with IABC, which is the International Association of Business Communicators. It is the top professional group for communicators. And Mike Klein has also been a former chair with IABC. He is a very strategic specialist in communications, one of the top 10 in the world. He has a very strong experience in the political scene, and he's helped us through our legislative testimony as well, written a book on communications, and just has a strong background as well. So that brings us to the communications budget. So we have $969,000 that we've had for the 2021 fiscal year. That was previously the budget for AE2S to do public outreach and legislative work. What we've done is have the contract for PR for Good for our strategic communication support, the GA group for our additional legislative support that was previously approved, and then a creative media team, which have not started yet, but they're local on the ground here. I've already talked with several different options and have found the right team to be able to activate, to do photo, video, web, some project management. So with those new people in place, it would still provide a savings of $500,000 for this year's budget. So just to recap, what I wanted to share with you today is just to give you that high-level view of communications overall, so you understand how broad it is of what we're trying to accomplish across all of those different areas of communications beyond public outreach, beyond legislative, some of those core initiatives that we're happening so quickly, especially with the P3 coming, the different channels that we're communicating through and how we need to evolve those a little bit as well. The next steps in the budget. So with that in mind, I will turn it back over to you to ask any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Is there any questions from anybody?
Mr. Chair, if I can just add a few words.
Please, Joel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really a response of the last meeting that we had. This PR for Good was presented and recommended for approval by the executive director. However, there was no motion. We did get some direction from the board to go back to public outreach and dig deeper into our communications approach. Jennifer and I did present to public outreach earlier today. Similar presentation. There was a lot of discussion, most of it surrounded by whether an RFP is appropriate for a contract like this. Ultimately, public outreach did pass a motion to recommend approval of this communication structure to the Diversion Authority Board. So I think we wanted to provide some additional context and some additional information for the Finance Committee to consider. I think when we brought the topic last time, we didn't do as well of a job to provide enough context for consideration. So Jennifer and I really want to be available for this meeting to answer any questions and make sure the Finance Committee is comfortable, one, with the proposed budget for communications for 2021, and also be able to answer any questions related to the structure and the scope of services that we have defined, which we believe is exactly what the Diversion Authority needs moving forward. But we certainly open and willing to hear comments and have some discussion as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over for any comments or questions that anyone may have for Jennifer and I.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Paulson or Ms. Darling? We have
Mr. Chairman.
Chad Peterson. Chad,
Mr.
you have the
Chairman.
floor.
Thank you, sir. So first and foremost, I think we need to evolve our communication strategy. Ideally, I think a lot of us, I shouldn't speak, my gut reaction is I think a lot of us would have liked to have this in place 8, 10, 12 years ago. It is what it is. That ship has sailed. We are where we are today. I think unifying our brand is, to me, common sense. It's good basic strategy. It's a good way to make sure we have some unity. And again, we need to not forget that while we all want this project done, we're still 6 to 8 years away from having a complete project. So this isn't money into the wind. We've got 6 to 8 years of talking to our neighbors and making sure that our friends that are impacted have a voice, have a say, and have a clear and concise understanding of what our mission is. I do think, however, though, that, and this is my main question is for Ms. Darling or Mr. Paulson, I do think it's prudent to go out for an RFP. I think we've got a number of solid communications teams here in the Fargo-Moorhead area, all of whom could do a goodly portion of this and excel. They've won, I know personally, friends of mine that used to own, I still have acquaintances that own businesses in town that have won national awards, regional awards for their communication strategies and things they've done for businesses here and around the nation. So to me, I think, again, it's needed, but I do think it is very prudent and then some to ask what our local community members can do. And again, they're going to compete with our friends from Minneapolis and our friends from Timbuktu. I think we open it up to everybody and we figure out what the best team is and hire the best team. With that, I will stop. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
I'll say Joe might want to share a little bit on this, but I'll just say that this communications contract is only for a short period of time to get us through the next several months while we're looking for that team on the ground. So if we take the time to put out an RFP, which could take several months, we're losing a lot of time as we're going into this strategic period for the P3, where we need some individuals strategically helping right now. But that's where we would look for a local team on the ground to be a permanent placement. So it wouldn't be something long-term for this particular contract. Joel, if you have anything else you would like to share as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Darling. You're right. That would be my comment. I certainly recognize that, Chad. And as a local person working in this community my whole career, I certainly would love to give preference to local firms. This contract is for a little over $200,000. As Jennifer had indicated, it is for a very short time period as well. And as we've moved forward with attempting to transition the communications program, I think it was clear from the board as far as direction that we want to find a cheaper approach that's more effective. And so Jennifer and I have attempted to present what we believe is a cheaper approach and more effective and more aligned. Now, I want to make a note that this proposed contract before you is just a time and materials contract where, we are not contracting for these individuals to be working on this program on a daily basis. They'll be pulled in as needed. That doesn't preclude us from pulling in other people as needed if we determine that we need additional support or there's another firm that can provide better services. But we do need support for Jennifer now. And without that, we are obviously entering the P3 procurement phase within a couple months. We will have the bids. There's immense amount of coordination, communication, both internally, externally with our partners, with landowners. There's just a whole lot of things going on time is a short commodity, would not prevent us from going out for an RFP for something maybe, that we could work with later in the year. But, I mentioned at the Public Outreach Committee because this topic got a lot of consideration. And I worked as a consultant prior to taking this job. And I know for some of these small consultant contracts, consultants will still put in upwards of $10,000 in costs to prepare a proposal to respond to an RFP. Obviously, you want to put your best foot forward. If you have 5 or even 10 proposers, that's a total cost to the industry of $100,000 to respond to a $200,000 proposal. Now, obviously, one person's going to win that. They'll try to recoup their costs to prepare that proposal in their fees that they propose for the project work. But there's a certain aspect of, in my mind, a contract size that really, makes sense to go out for an RFP, and a contract size such as this, which is short term and smaller in nature compared to what we do deal with, that, doing this direct selection does make sense. Now, I also want to, there was some discussion about maybe creating an RFP policy that the Diversion Authority can implement as we move forward. And I have to say, there's a lot of other areas we could be talking about this. It's not just communications. We do a lot of engineering work right now that goes to a handful of consultants. Some of it is related to each other, and it's good to have that institutional knowledge in order to complete the work. But other aspects of engineering are not. And I know there's 12 or more engineering firms here locally in town that would love to, also, provide services for the Diversion Authority. We also talked about legal services that the Diversion Authority has used in the past. And there hasn't been a necessary policy on the hiring of legal services either. So I think I did agree that, this discussion is great because right now, I'm doing my best to interpret the needs of the board and to do what I believe is in the best interest of the Diversion Authority. But, the more clarity I can get from the board on items such as this, the easier it makes it for us to efficiently provide the necessary resources and services that we need to move forward and be successful in this project.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Commissioner Hendrickson has his hand up. Please, Chuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a quick question for you. I understand, Joel, that we want to go local. So what is the time frame for that RFP then if we do? Because way I look at this, it looks like a bridge just to get us by until we can hire local, and I'm just wondering a time frame for that RFP.
Well, right now, Councilmember Hendrickson, we are not contemplating an RFP. So because of the smaller nature of this contract and the short-term nature, we were going to rely on PR for good to pull in as needed as big items came up and things came up. Jennifer, of course, is implementing the day-to-day communication approach, but she can only do so much with the amount of work that is currently ahead of us and currently on our desks today. If the board directed, I could certainly do an RFP for these services. What we would do is we would prepare our scope of services and what we're looking for, along with run that through legal to ensure that we are creating a proper RFP document. We would then put that out to the market and request proposals. Typically, you advertise for 3 to 4 weeks. Take proposals. We would want to pull together a team of review professionals to review the proposals, score them, ultimately recommend an approved contractor to the Diversion Authority. We would then review that and make that recommendation to the Finance Committee. And then, of course, the board as well. So, the complete turnaround to go through that process and get it on a finance committee and a board meeting, I think you'd be really looking at a minimum of 2 to 3 months in order to get that individual up to speed. And then, of course, there's just getting up to speed on the project itself is going to take some time as well. So.
And so it'd just be like an ad hoc thing, well, we need you for this, so we'll use you.
And that's how we've structured this particular approach right now. In the past, we've had full-time consultants working on this program. They were billing 8 hours a day, managing aspects of the communications program. This is really an approach to keep a tighter control on the amount of effort that goes into any particular task that we're asking of the consultant. And it is a time and materials, a maximum not to exceed contract. And so it's something that we can review on a monthly basis, and we're going to know where we're at. We anticipated what is being proposed in the PR for Good agreement before you today as an amount of work that we felt was appropriate over the next, over the remainder of the year. Obviously, for communications, big things come along that require more effort, and maybe once those things have been accomplished, you don't have as much communications for a small period of time. So it's very cyclical in nature. I think Jennifer and I did our best to, present a budget here today that we felt appropriate. But certainly a need to monitor that budget over time to ensure that we're communicating that effectively with the finance and the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paulson. I like the aspect of the money savings there. $500,000, that's pretty big in my opinion. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have another hand
Mr.
raised.
Chairman?
We have another hand raised with Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Paulson, I like what Mr. Hendricks said regarding when he used his terminology, the bridge, to find out what's next. Initially, I have no problem with this. I've talked to Ms. Darling, and I do support this in concept. She needs some help right now, and the immediacy of it needs to be needs to be accounted for. So I'm supportive of this if you're looking for a motion today, but I do want to reinforce, Mr. Paulson, what you said regarding RFPs. I've been critical, highly critical, in fact, of local jurisdictions that get married to certain architecture firms. Obviously, personally, I have some bias in this. What happens is a city commission, a school board, typically gets locked into one design firm and says, boy, they're the only ones that can do this project. Any architectural firm in any city around us can do darn near any project. And it's easier for some people to just say, well, let's just stick with those people because it's consistent. Well, no, once you've fed off the government trough, one time you need to take a break and then let's go to the next firm, because that next firm will be just as capable as the firm we just hired. So I love the idea of going out for an RFP, and maybe you have brainstorming here again, a team of communications people, one group specializes in websites, one specializes in, advertising communications. I don't know. But what I would love to see you do is support this as a bridge. We go out for RFPs for anything, frankly. I love the idea of taking off a small bridge project or something like that and giving it to a small engineering firm. I mean, a bridge is a bridge. It's defy gravity. And if you can't defy gravity as a civil engineer, you're not going to be a very good civil engineer for very long. So I think what I would love to see you do is RFPs for as much as we can and go from there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. There was someone else that sounded like they wanted to make. Please.
Chair Mahoney.
Please, Mr.
Chairman.
Mahoney.
Yes, Joe, I went back and looked at the contract with 82, and I actually found the contract for 2021 on public involvement and outreach at $552,000, and then legislative services at $197,000, and that was before the settlement. So obviously those costs would come down because we no longer have opposition. Legislative session, we have a lobbyist. I don't know if we'd use 82 much on that. My concern is this: is you have an Edina firm, and for those of North Dakota, Edina is considered somewhat as a high-class cake eater area. When you're doing your communication with the legislative body, how can the Edina team understand the complexities of our legislative? So Bernie and I talked about sending out something in regards to the House. And then Bernie reaches back and says, there's sensitivity here. We probably shouldn't say anything because we may irritate them rather than have it go forward. How are they going to get to know Bernie, Chad Peterson, myself, other people? So you're hiring them for a bridge, but yet they have to get to know all the players, whereas the local team would know the players. You're having a firm suddenly come in and try to find out all the players and what to do. Now, if they're just a bridge for Jennifer's help and it's not really to get involved with the DA board, then that's a different thing. But I would say there's a lot of talent locally that we have that could handle the tasks at hand. And I think especially we have one consultant in Iceland. I do think that the legislative people are going to find that out, and we're going to look like we really reached outside of our bailiwick as going down to Edina. And I know, Joel, you say local can extend 400 miles, but public relations is local. And the public relations teams, how do they get to know Jennifer? How do they get to know the team? Oh, they go through Edina. They're not dealing with anybody local, and all the local people know each other. And we needed the tax bill passed in 2016. We used local firms, local people to help us out. I think people remember that. And when you suddenly say, well, there's nobody good enough to do that, they helped us pass a 50-year tax. That's pretty impressive as far as communication. So the difficulty I have with, you can do an RFP in less than 4 to 6 weeks if we push something quickly and have to get it. And this may be utilized as a bridge, but okay, you put 250 in it, they've done all that effort, and then they're going to walk away. Whereas you could have put 250 local, and then you got the team on board, knows what Jennifer wants to do, and going forward, there's no wasted work. Then you have work that continues and goes forward. But we're not writing a book here. We're doing communication and public relations, and that has to build. And Jennifer has to get her name out there. The locals need to know who to call. The locals need to know what's going on. And Joel, you're an excellent communicator. You've done a great job, but do I need you speaking at colleges? I need you doing your work. And do I need Jennifer speaking at colleges? No, I need people on the ground doing the work that's in this community. So I do not like this proposal at all, and I might go with Chad because we just have to do it to get by. But I just do not think this was handled the best way and could have been handled much better. Local communications is local, and you've got to know your parties. And I know Bernie knows this for his signage company. You had to know the people involved and know what happens, because you won't have crises if you know what's going on and people are sniffing and know what's happening. How can a firm in Edina do that? I just don't believe they can.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. Mr. Paulson or Ms. Darling, would you like to respond?
Yeah, that was a lot to unpack, so I'll start in the best I can. And Mayor Mahoney, if there's anything I missed, please let me know. I completely understand the local perspective, and I never did say there was nobody local that could complete this. There certainly is. We have great talent here local, and I'm a local person. I absolutely advocate for local individuals. What you have before you is not folks that we're intending to put in front of legislators or in front of local groups. These are support people only. They assist in developing content that is directed by Jennifer and I, so that we can get those things done without spending our time in front of a computer typing up drafts of press releases and those sorts of things, because we have extremely other pressing things that are very valuable to moving things along. And so it allows us to do more if we have those support people behind us that can assist in developing the content and creating the things that we need to use to get in front of the legislators and in front of the local communities, in front of landowners. And again, this is a bridge to get us where we ultimately want to go. I think Jennifer and I have talked about creating some additional internal DA positions under her that would essentially eliminate any need for any consultants on the communications. But that's going to take some time to get there. We're still developing our HR policies. We're still dealing with a number of those things, and we're working as fast as we can. But, again, when we get pulled in so many different directions, we need that support staff to allow us to continue to move forward. Now, these folks that we're proposing here today, I think their qualifications look great. And when you're focusing them just on the technical aspects, I think they're going to perform wonderfully. But we're not asking them to be the face of the diversion, and we're certainly not asking them to get out and communicate with legislators or other people. But they are going to support us so we can do that, and we can be more effective at how we go about doing that. And
Joel, I'll just add that the intent has actually always been to go local. That's why this contract is only for 2021. The previous contract with AE2S was till 2026. So that is why we did a short contract for this, just to get us through this phase. And then we will focus on having the boots on the ground here for a permanent staff in the local area.
But you mentioned, Jennifer, perhaps $150,000 more on impact, and is that going to be people you hire to work within the team, or is that going to be consultants?
It would be either consultants or within the team, but they are based local here on the ground. It could be either way, whatever works best financially.
I'm just going to make a point of some of the research when I took the position as chairman of the finance committee, I needed to understand what local was, and I will remind everyone that when we were working with Governor Walz in the state of Minnesota and with our friends, on the east side of the river, that was one of the things that he asked for when Mayor Judd and all of the great people from the Minnesota side were working with the governor's office and with the Minnesota legislature, is that Governor Walz specifically referenced that local was within 400 miles, which obviously included the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. So I only bring that up for context, finance committee members. That was part of a request made by our Minnesota partners.
And I'll just add to that, the head of the PR for Good firm went to Concordia College and lived and worked in this area for many, many years. So she has a pretty good understanding of this area and everyone involved.
So are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Darling or Mr. Paulson with regard to the communication director update and the proposal that is in front of us? This is for information only. The contracting actions will be in the next order of business unless anyone of my fellow finance committee members wants to deal with it differently. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to item number 8, the contracting actions. Mr. Paulson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have 2 contracting actions before the Finance Committee today. I think we've discussed the PR for Good contract at length. It was contained in the packet again this month. Not much has changed. I do want to make a few notes though, because of the time delay. The actual proposal, I think is a little bit. How do I put it? A little bit out of date. So we talk about legislative support. Obviously, we've had significant legislative wins recently. We have only used PR for Good for a very small amount, just to get started to test them out. That was discussed at the last finance meeting, and that advanced work directive was approved. So the budget for legislative support, would be probably distributed between some of these other ones, but we are still asking for the same amount of $237,000 for PR for Good for support, as Jennifer and I laid out. So I'll open it up for that one first, and then I can explain the Crown appraisal second.
Additional comments or questions of Mr. Paulson on the approved contract actions? And we're talking specifically PR for Good at this point. All right, Mr. Paulson, please move forward.
All right, the next MSA contracting action is for Crown Appraisal. They are an appraisal firm that has worked for the Cass County Joint Resource District and the MCC JPA. This is really just to extend their services through an MSA from 2021 to 2023. This does not include any task order budget today. It's just the new MSA or the updated MSA for Crown Appraisal.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Any questions with regarding to the new MSA for Crown Appraisals? All right. This isn't the contracting actions are a actionable item. Do I have a motion?
This is Chuck. I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Hendrickson. Is there a second, please?
Mr. Chairman, could you split the two motions, please? And I would second at that point if we could split them as well.
Mr. Hendrickson, you made the motion. The second is requesting that I split the motion. I have to have your approval before I do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. We will split the two. The first order of business will be we'll call for a vote on the PR for Good contract for $237,000 for the 2021 year for communication services. John, would you please call the roll on this item?
Discussion on the motion.
Oh, pardon me. Is there any discussion? Thank you, Mr. Steen.
This is Rick. I just have one question, Joel, on the first one, and it's minor, but you've detailed out the proposal for whatever the total amount is here, and then talked about eliminating not eliminating, but significantly reducing the legislative support. But let's just run that to the other areas. I just a little uncomfortable with how we just take that 55,000 and spread it out to the rest of it. So did we underestimate the cost of the rest of the components, or are we just going to kind of give this a push and not worry about it?
Well, so great question, Commissioner Steen. So we would manage this contract under the contract as a whole. So 237,000 would be the budget for the whole. Now, if they spent 50,000 on media relations and 40,000 on legislative support, we would be treating it as a whole budget and use them on an as-needed basis. So as we kind of partitioned out the amount of hours that we felt appropriate to dedicate to communications, we did lay it out this way. We did talk to PR for Good since the last meeting and since we had some recent developments. And so Jennifer and I went through an exercise to take the $237,000 budget and determine if we felt it was still appropriate, given all of the different areas that PR for Good could assist us. And we would rather keep it at the 237. I mean, I think we could go with a smaller budget. And if we got to, a max, we would come back and look for a task order amendment. Or the executive director could approve the task order amendment. But I think the overall budget approach is what we're looking at here, and then just managing that budget throughout the year. As I mentioned before, communications is kind of difficult, especially when it's related to developments that occur with the project. And if the developments don't occur, we don't use the communications. If they do occur, we use the communications. And so it's really, this is a time and materials. If we don't use it, we don't use it. But we felt this was still an appropriate range for a budget for us to be shooting for support services for our communications.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, just to follow up. And Joel, I agree, communications is difficult. So we found that out in this last couple of weeks, right?
Yes.
But I'm not going to propose any type of an adjustment to this, but I will let you know I'll be interested in following how we spend the 237,000 if we do or do not. So just to let you know that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Is there any other discussion on the communication services for the contract of $237,000 for PR for Good. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Don, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
No.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Costin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
No.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Motion carries. Item number 2, as we split this, is for the new MSA for Crown Appraisal. Is there any discussion on this item? Do I have a motion, please?
I think you had a motion in a second already, Chair.
On this second item?
Yeah, we split the vote, Bernie.
Yep.
Okay.
Mahoney had seconded both. So.
All right. I didn't realize that they included both of them. All right. My apologies. Moving on. Executive directors approve contract actions.
Still got to take the vote.
Oh, geez. You guys are getting me all confused here today.
Sorry.
Don, please take the roll.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Costin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir,
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Crown Appraisal motion passes too. Next order of business is the executive director approves contract actions. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are for information, but certainly available to answer any questions. The first is Task Order 20, Amendment Number 8. This is for design services for the 45th Street and County Road 16 intersection. This is related to some core work that we are having Houston Moore Group assist the Corps with. So this is that is a design amendment. The second one is Task Order 21, Amendment 9, P3 procurement, and that just incorporates new updated rates for 2021 and extends the period of performance through 2021. Now, I want to make a note for the Finance Committee as awareness in the MSAs that were approved and renegotiated last year. There is a provision for a 3% rate increase for consultants. Most consultants have approached me and requested the 3%, reviewed the business case for that, and have approved. And so that is included in these new task order amendments that are extending the period of performance. Same with Task Order 22, Amendment Number 5, extends the period of performance and incorporates 2021 rates. In Task Order 15, Amendment 13, the draft operations plan, same, extends the period of performance to 2021 and incorporates 2021 rates. So certainly able to answer any questions related to those items.
Are there any questions of Mr. Paulson? All right, thank you. Moving on, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a number of Cass County Joint Water Resource District approved contracting actions to report out to the board. I won't go in depth unless anybody has any questions or concerns. All of the information has been provided to you in your packet. Almost all of the task order amendments are related to additional property appraisal services for various groups. as well as property acquisition support. So I am available if there's any questions. Certainly dig into them, unless you want to take these one at a time, Mr. Chair. So. But these are for your information only, not action items. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Questions for Mr. Paulson? Okay, moving on, please.
All right, the last item is MCC JPA approved contracting actions, and they have one for property appraisal services for Crown Appraisals for $11,500. That's related to a number of voluntary property acquisitions that took place last month. So we're moving forward with the appraisals.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Are there any questions on the approved contract actions? All right, moving on to the next order of business is other business. First item is the Diversion Authority Board approval of the MOU and agreement actions. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two MOUs for the Southern Embankment and Associated Infrastructure. That's what SEA AI stands for. This is the area of the project that is being constructed by the Corps. Pursuant to the project partnership agreement, the authority is responsible for acquiring the rights of way, the relocations of the roads and utilities. We've been working through the MOUs with the different jurisdictions and utilities in the Southern Embankment, much like the process we went through for the diversion channel. So that means that if a road needs to be relocated or a utility needs to be relocated, you'll be seeing a set of MOUs through the Southern Embankment slowly coming through, along with the last couple for the channel. So the first MOU, I know the hour's late, so I won't go into any great detail, but it's with Cass County. And the second one is with Southeast Cass Water Resource District. Both entities approved the MOUs, and so it would be up to the authority to approve them. I can certainly answer any questions, but pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Are there any questions of Mr. Shockley on these two items? I have them as actionable items. Would you like them split or vote on them together? Any suggestions?
Board can do what you want to do, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Are there any questions of Mr. Shockley?
Mr. Chairman, Peterson motion to approve both.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Is there a second, please?
Steen, second.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Cass County MOU for the Southeast Embankment, as well as the Southeast Cass Water Rural District Southeast Embankment MOU. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Don, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Motion passes. The next order of business is a formal settlement agreement for upstream JPA. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to present to the board the final formal settlement agreement for resolution of all the litigation claims. The board members on the call, along with the other members of the Finance Committee, will recall late last year we reached a binding term sheet with the upstream to resolve all of their claims and dismiss the litigation. As part of that binding term sheet, the parties had contemplated completion of a more comprehensive settlement agreement that just includes timelines, due diligence and notice provisions to protect the diversion authority and the parties. I spent quite a bit of time working through these details with counsel for the upstream, along with Wolverton and Comstock. The agreement doesn't really vary from the term sheet. It just adds in a lot of the notice proceedings, or notice procedures and procedures if there's changes of law and other issues. I can certainly answer any questions that you might have about the settlement agreement. It has been approved by Buffalo Red Watershed District, the JPA, Comstock, and Wolverton. So the Diversion Authority is the final entity to approve or to have approval over the settlement agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Are there any questions of Mr. Shockley with regard to the formal settlement agreement for the upstream JPA?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Mr. Shockley, I know it's in here, and I'm sure you're going to tell me it's on page 1, but where do we address the dispute resolution board? I, for the life of me, can't find it in here.
The dispute resolution board, so there's two things that are covered in the agreement. The first is if there is a dispute with respect to a change of law that's governed by this agreement. So let's say in 10 years, the federal government imposes a special new law on, there's a beetle that's found to be an endangered species and we have to do something different to the project. There's a process and a group that has to meet that would include the Diversion Authority, Buffalo Red, and JPA to see how that change of law affects the agreement. The dispute resolution board is covered, and I'm paging through. It gets towards the end of the agreement, and
Mr. Shockley, where I'm going with this is, we had met previously, and we didn't determine a composition of that board. Is that spelled out somewhere specifically in here, or is it still up in the air? That's where I'm going with this.
Okay, great question. It is so that board is talked about in this agreement, but it's not spelled out the composition, and that board's also required by the Office of State Engineer, their permits for the project. We are working on a resolution that will come to the board probably in the next 60 to 90 days to work through who's going to sit on that alternative dispute resolution board. And that's to cover claims by property owners who feel that the project somehow damaged them and they were outside of the flowage easement, what's covered by the flowage easement, or crop insurance or something like that. So, but great question.
Would we amend this, or would it just be a separate agreement?
It'll actually be a separate resolution. It won't be an agreement with any party. We're just required to create that board. And so we'll have a resolution creating the board and going through how claims are processed. And that's fairly well developed right now, but we wanted to get the settlement agreement done first and then move to that process next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson, for the question. Are there any additional questions of Mr. Shockley? Are there any additional questions? This is an actionable item. I'd like a motion to settle it.
Move to approve, Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jacobson.
Thank you, Dan. Been moved and seconded to approve the formal settlement agreement for the upstream JPA as presented by Mr. Shockley today. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Joel and John and all their hard efforts to get this done. And I know all of us as we sit on the DA board, it was a difficult decision, but I know how much more we're happy about moving along forward with the project and not having another threat of litigation. So I want to just, John is very masterful in how he wrote this one out. So just appreciate all that hard work and effort. And Joel had that smooth tongue that worked out any differences. So.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As some of you know, I really struggled with this, and I still do, but I am yielding to my peers on the board, and I am putting my faith in the folks that are going to be administering this money down south, and I hope they do right by the citizens. I hope they do right by their citizens and spend this money in all the right ways. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Is there any further discussion on the settlement agreement for the upstream JPA? Don, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Mr. Costin.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Montplaisir.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. McCall.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. The motion passes. Next order of business is the policy on disposition and management of comprehensive project lands. Mr. Nicholson.
Mr. Chairman, the lands committee today tabled that policy, and so it will need additional work before it goes before the finance committee and before the board.
Thank you. I've been attending that lands meetings discussions with regard to this, and I absolutely commend them for how thorough they're being and the work that they're doing on that. So thank you, Mr. Nicholson. They're doing a great job. It's a very difficult document to put together. Next order of business is a property acquisition status report. Mr. Dodds.
Can you guys hear me okay?
You're a little bit fuzzy, but not bad, Eric.
All right, I'm traveling to another meeting, so hopefully I can get through this shortly. But if you have any questions, the staff report is in your packet. Just a few things to point out. We've continued to make progress on buying all the necessary land for the channel. Quick take actions that have turned into settlement agreements over the last month, and so that's a good trend. Some of the other big changes that you'll see in the report this month is that we have tripped a bunch of the upstream parcels into what's called the appraisal pending. So previously those parcels were just noted as an impact parcel. Now that Crown Appraisals is under contract to do the flow easement study, we've flagged them as under appraisal. So you'll see a lot of orange on the one map. So there's a lot of appraisal activity that's ongoing, and Lands team is keeping plenty busy working on that and supporting the other acquisitions. There was a comment earlier about budgets for land and whether we're staying within budget. You'll see the budget indicators in the land status report as well. Those budgets are reflective of the dollars paid to the property owners, and you'll see that we are well within our budgets established for each one of those. But as Joel noted earlier, there has been, as we've been following the quick take statute, that's a very arduous process, and so we've had more legal fees and more fees from our negotiating teams and management teams to manage through that quick take process. So we're keeping a close eye on all that, but I'm happy to say we're progressing nicely and staying on track. So I'll pause there. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Dodds? All right. You have anything else for us, Mr. Dodds? Eric, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here. I have nothing else for me.
Thank you for your report. This is for information. This is for information only. We'll be moving on now. Jennifer is the MFDA organizational chart. Metro Flood Diversion Authority organizational chart.
Mr. Chair, I can take that one.
Okay, Mr. Folsom.
Sorry, I wanted to provide on an annual basis at a minimum the organizational structure for the Diversion Authority, as well as the individuals and their contact information. I just want to make a note that Chairwoman Carlson did mention that we are missing one position here. The City of Moorhead has yet to appoint a new board member. She did indicate that that would occur once the council takes action on selecting or going through a process to implement a new council member. The city would then decide. So for the time being, we will have a 12-member board. And once that board member is filled, I'll update the Diversion Authority structure. If we move to the second page here, shows the executive leadership structure with the positions that we have hired to date, and also indicating the future role for the finance director. The next page in your packet shows the team leads. Most of these are consultant positions, but they are the primary folks that are responsible for the large areas of work that are currently being undertaken, and so their names and contact information is there. Again, this is just for your information, and I'll be discussing this at the board meeting tomorrow as well.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Any questions on the organizational chart? All right, thank you. I want to make a note with regard to some research that I've been doing on policies and procedures and the like, and I would like to acknowledge Mr. Kent Costin and Mr. Rick Steen and Mr. Redlinger for indulging me with some of the issues and questions that I have. They've been exceptionally kind and generous with their time and supportive of my research on policies and procedures. So again, my thanks to Mr. Costin, Mr. Steen, and Mr. Redlinger. Our next meeting will be March 24th. Does any member of the Finance Committee have anything for the good of the order or anything they'd like to bring forward at this time?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. We stand adjourned.